Detroit Lions fans, Detroit Den 313 back with another one. Steve, before we get going, you know what they're supposed to do, man. Bang, 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 bang. Bang that subscribe button. Just did a huge giveaway. Looking at doing another one. Got a story for you guys. I'll save it because I haven't got a cool donation that I think is going to be on the next giveaway yet. When I get it in my hands, I'll talk about it. But things are happening. Things are happening.
Will's giving away season tickets.
Yeah. Don't say that. Hey, if we get 1 million subscribers though, then maybe
we would be giving away season tickets.
Yeah.
Well,
talk to him. What's up?
Last night after we recorded, not anything breaking news or anything like that. Nothing too wild, but some news did come out. All right, when we talked about in a whole episode about breadcrumbs and hints, jump on Twitter. First thing I see is the Detroit Lions had some top 30 visits. Very. I don't know when. I assume recently, but. Here's 4 names. All right. There's some interesting names on this list for me. Michigan Edge, Josiah Stewart, and North Dakota State offensive lineman Gray Zabel. I've looked into the other 2 guys, and I told you not 100% in love with what I see, so we're mainly going to focus on Zabel and Stewart today, but we'll do a little bit more homework on the other 2 guys, but I think the other ones are pretty big names, second round type guys. So how do you feel about these two fellas?
Well, first things first, I'm going to tell you, put some respect on Chaz Chambliss' name. He's a dog. He's a dog. But he'd be a late round guy that's a dog. But they are the 2 big dogs on here, obviously, are Josiah Stewart and my boy Gray, man. I have been pretty high on my boy Tyler Booker. I've said it, I'd be willing to take him at pick 28. Truly don't think that he'll be there at pick 28, but we've seen some mock drafts with Mel Kiper and Daniel Jeremiah and even a couple other people now that's had him sliding to the end of the first round. So hey, if that happens, I would be more than happy to get a guy like Tyler Booker. But my boy Gray Zabel, man, normally they say if you don't have a position, that's probably a sign that you're not that good. That is not the case here. That dude can play center, guard, or tackle. He's a complete utility knife. He's a guy that really excites me in this draft. Surprised to see. That's another one. I'd be surprised if, like, I know the Baltimore Ravens are ahead of us, and they've lost guys. Like they lost Zeitler to us. They could use a guard as well. I could see them if Tyler Booker's off the board. I could see them taking Gray. But if he does slide to pick 28, I would be very interested. Steve, is he a guy that you would be interested in?
Not at pick 28. Will, sticking to my guns. Defensive line first, but he's an interesting name. I think he did play all 5 positions at the Senior Bowl. He was kind of working out left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle. Like that's when I started really like, okay, let's take a look at this kid, because when we talk about position versatility, something Brad Holmes likes to do, you draft a Gray Zabel, if anyone on your offensive line goes down, you've immediately got his replacement. All right. I think the key is probably interior offensive line, mostly, I'd have to say, but I'm not interested in the first round. He's an interesting prospect, but I know what the Detroit Lions need. And I don't know if we're going to have another conversation about best player available if he happens to be there at pick 28. I don't think it fits the Detroit Lions because of what we need on the defensive side of the football. But if Brad Holmes sees it differently and that's the guy, I'm very comfortable with what he can do on a football team. I mean, let's have a conversation real quick. Do you think that it matters anything at all that he plays at North Dakota State and doesn't go against like some top tier college talent, like, in the Big Ten or the SEC? Do you think that matters at all?
No, not at all. And here's why. And I will say I am in complete disagreement about him fitting the Detroit Lions and fitting what we need, just because we talked about the potential of maybe having somebody who could help out Taylor Decker if he had to miss some time. When we look at our roster now, who would we want that to be out of that group? Gray is a guy who could potentially slide into any position and offer a Band-Aid. That excites me immediately. In NFL, I believe he's a guard or a center. Man, we got Frank Ragnow, who's been known to miss a game or two. He's not a guy that's going to miss a bunch of time, but he's missed a game or two here and there. Hey, we could slide him right in there, or we could take Glasgow still, bump Glasgow over, and then slide him into the other guard spot. I think it's a guy who instantly offers us a guy who can play multiple positions for a long time for the Detroit Lions. I think he's one of those guys that's got just a very, very, very high floor. You know what you're going to get out of him. Like it's no questions, it's no ifs, ands, or buts. So when you mention a small school thing, I got a couple of clips. The same thing. I try not to bore you guys with film. I try to keep it under 2 minutes. I think this is about a minute, but I got a little bit of film of Gray Zabel to kind of articulate what I'm talking about. Now, this is him at North Dakota State. He's playing left tackle, right? So this is him getting out, showing his athleticism, showing his demeanor. He's a guy that will play physical. This is him in the pass game. Now, getting off of North Dakota State, taking him to the Senior Bowl. If you got questions about him being at a small school, let's get him at the Senior Bowl. People have questions about the Senior Bowl sometimes, but I will caution you and say this. These Senior Bowl offenses and defenses that are out there are better than any college team that they're going to go against. All right. So these are NFL caliber guys. These are all guys that are going to be potentially get drafted. This is him going from guard. This is him playing center. He played a little bit of tackle. At the Senior Bowl, throughout the week, he played everything, and he showed all the tools. He's passing guys off, right, to other guys and getting up on linebackers. He's jumping out athletic enough to get in on screen plays. This is him anchoring down at the center spot in the pass game. Like, he did everything that you needed an offensive lineman to do at the Senior Bowl, which eliminated all questions about small school stuff. For me, this is a guy that I think is going to be a bookend starter, and a guy that you just forget that's out there. Like, he's not going to be the best guy on your line. He's not going to be competing with Penei Sewell, but he's going to be one of those guys that you're just like, oh yeah, he was out there. He did have a great football game. He is a guy that has a great PFF score. He is a guy kind of like a Kevin Zeitler type of dude, man. Last thing that I'll say about this, he was the player of the Senior Bowl across all players. He was a player of the Senior Bowl. Doing that at the offensive lineman spot, you got to be special, man. I think he's the guy there at pick 28. I would not mind at all being a Detroit.
I just don't want first round, and I get it. I know he's not going to last to the second round. I think he's going to be a top 5 offensive lineman in the draft, so those don't last long with teams picking way ahead of us and us being where we are. But if this were any other draft, my mind would be a little bit more different. But I can't get off some pass rushers first. I don't know. Would you disagree with me with Will? I said the same thing. The only thing I said was I just don't want him in the first round. I'm locked into what I want in the first round. Are you switching your mind? Are you leaning more toward offensive line in the first round now?
No, it's not about offensive line, but it is about BPA to a certain level. Like, so when we're talking about a guy like that, I just feel like I said before, now you go to Canton and you get Jahmyr Gibbs fitted for a gold jacket. That's the piece of this offense that you added to this offense, and you probably solidify it for at least the next 4 years. Right? Like, and if Frank wants to step away, okay, you just slide him right in there. Right? If Frank's staying in Glasgow, you don't want to give him a deal, you just slide him right in there. Like, it's a bookend piece to your offensive line, and it could really make you done for a long time if any of these other guys end up working out. So let's say Giovanni Manu works out, and you can throw him in at guard. Okay, he slides in the guard. You slide my man Gray over to center. We're good for a long time. So those are all of the reasons that I would say that I disagree when I talk about him or Tyler Booker at that guard position and solidifying and bolstering this offensive line. It excites me a lot. And to add on to that, I could see Brad Holmes trading up into that second round and going to get an edge rusher. When I look at the back half of this draft and the edge rushers on the back half of this draft, they're very similar. You got fast guys that can rush the edges. You got strong guys that can set edges. And it's kind of sketchy on them doing both. All right. So when the similarities between the back end of these edge rushers, it just makes me feel like I can go get an offensive lineman that could really solidify my offensive line and then still be able to get an edge rusher in the second round, maybe even trade up to the top half of the second round. And I'm not missing anything. I'm having my dinner, but I'm going to have that dessert too. And maybe I'll really get crazy. Like we talked about it. Maybe I'll have dessert before dinner and then have dinner and have a little dessert after. So yeah, for those are just the reasons, man. If I could get one of those two offensive linemen, I just think that you can't pass on him.
I got to see what Mama Ford's dessert menu looks like, see what she's going to feed me before I get some of that spaghetti. Is all I'm going to say. Cause yeah. Listen, I'm all about trench warfare. All right. I just look at the draft as when I draft you in the first round, I need you to have a position I can throw you in right away. And with Gray Zabel, he's a phenomenal athlete. But when I look at the Lions team, he doesn't have a position available to him yet. Could he come in and compete during training camp and maybe take Graham Glasgow's job? Yeah, he probably could, and I think he probably would. He probably would win that job if I'm being honest. But if I draft a defensive end, I know Marcus Davenport's getting hurt. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I don't want to see anyone get injured or boo-booed, even on other teams. But the track record of Marcus Davenport is injury prone. So if I draft a defensive end, I know I've got a guy that's getting on the field eventually. With Zabel, I'm probably looking at someone going down if he doesn't really pick up the NFL speed fast enough like he does in training camp. And I wish that I'll call it the All-Star game, the Senior Bowl. I really like the Senior Bowl. I think it's a fantastic showcase. Some NFL coaches get to participate in that. I don't know who the coaches were this past year, but I know Dan Campbell was a part of it a few years ago. I think it's the worst record teams get to go coach the Senior Bowl to get a little extra looks, if I'm not mistaken. So they get a little hands-on with some coaches as well. So I really love the Senior Bowl. I try to dial in as much as I can. I know I follow like Jeremy Risden. I know he's always down there. I'm trying to keep track with what he's doing and who he's interviewing. He puts out some pretty good content on Twitter and their YouTube channel. So I wish that the Senior Bowl was like a month long, maybe not like a game, but like some drills, some practices, that kind of stuff. So we could get an even better look, because he went out there and all week, all we heard about was Gray Zabel on the offensive line, dominating everyone. So
Yeah.
I like Gray Zabel. It's just, I don't see him playing for the Detroit Lions week one right off the rip, where I could probably draft a defensive end and throw him out there as a starter or a second string rotational guy. So that's literally the only thing that I don't like is offensive line. I don't like to sit those guys well. I feel like if we had a glaring, huge, massive need, he's probably a sprint to the podium guy, but the Lions just aren't. We're not in that boat. Luckily, we still have a pretty solid offensive line, but if he's the guy, I could see him being a starter by like week 3 or 4 potentially.
Yeah, and then Graham was a little bit banged up. I know a lot of people gave Graham a hard time for how he played last year. Who knows if he's coming back healthy or if he's got some nagging things that are going on. Praying that he's coming back healthy. You know, if you're a Detroit Lion wearing Honolulu blue, we are cheering for you. But it just gives a little bit of insurance in that realm as well. And like I said, we know there's going to be a different starter for the future. I think Graham is 35, 36 years old. Like we're moving in a different direction. It'd be nice to have that piece and be going into the 2026 draft, not worrying about a guard if you don't get one. Or I think the drop off is huge. I know the guard out of Arizona is a guy that a lot of people like. I'll tell you, between Zabel and Booker and then him, there's a huge difference. I was watching one-on-ones, and I don't mean one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl or one-on-one competitions. I mean, I was watching different one-on-one matchups, but from the lineman from Arizona, and I was like, man, it is a world of difference between the two. Can he come to the NFL and be a guy who catches on in time? Yeah, but I think he needs more time to develop than either of those two guys.
You ready to skip to our next man?
I am.
There was another interesting name, and we've talked about him before. I think we're very, very familiar with his game, but the Lions also had a top 30 visit with Michigan edge rusher Josiah Stewart. Will, I know he was very, very high on your list at one point. I think he was probably in your top 5. I don't think you've ever officially said that, but I'm just guessing. Is he still pretty high on your radar? Are you still tracking him?
Yeah, he is. He not top 5 at pick 28, but
no, just like in the draft in general.
Yeah, he's top 5 guys I like in general, and he's top 5 guys that I would like at pick 60 for sure. I've been going over a lot of film with him because I got a lot of questions. He's a bit of a one-trick pony when it comes to edge rushing. He's a bit of a guy that's going to beat you with speed. He's going to try to dip and rip and beat you around the corner. That's what he does, man. That's who he is. Initially, for a few days, that was a turnoff to me in a sense of like, I was even thinking about maybe reaching and trading up to go get him because of how explosive he is and how twitched up he is. But then I started to watch a little bit more, and then I did what I always do. I just started watching games, full games. One thing that I love about him is when you watch a Michigan football game, he jumps off the screen at you. You know he's in the game. He's not one of those guys that just kind of blends in, and if you're not watching him, then you don't notice him. I love that. I love his tenacity. I love his relentlessness. I love his motor. And then as I dug more into him, I started to understand when he was at Coastal Carolina, where he transferred from, he was a straight 4 technique. He was straight up playing on the tackle, right? Just straight up. You know, it wasn't lining up in a wide 9. It wasn't rushing off the edge. It wasn't dropping back into coverage. It was just playing in the trenches, pinning his ears back. I know that that's not Big Ten football, but I also understand the mentality that you have to be even want to be down in there and playing that type of football. I like that he has that in his tool bag. In the NFL, I wonder, I wonder what he's going to be. I wonder what he can potentially turn into. I wonder what his ceiling is. At Michigan, I think there was things that we didn't need him to do that NFL teams may need him to do, and I wonder if he can do those things. So before I turn it over to you, I got a couple of clips to just kind of elaborate where I'm going with that, because I have a question for you after this. Because if he can do what I think he may be able to do, I think it could be huge and a huge signing for the Detroit Lions. Here it goes. Uh, Josiah Stewart, this is him coming off of the edge. This is what I was talking about. He's got that dip and rip, beat you with speed. He's going to be an animal. Now, this is a little bit different. He's in space. He's in space, making a tackle in space. I really like that, and that's really interesting to me. Now, again, back off of that edge, you're going to see the same thing. You're going to see a dip, you're going to see a rip, and you're going to see him beating them with speed, man. Same thing on the outside edge, dip, rip, use them hands and swipe, beat you with speed. Like, and then our boy Kenneth Grant doing what he does.
KG.
We'll talk about him later. But this is him squeezing down a run play and running it down from the backside. That's another thing that I love, especially when the Philadelphia Eagles like to run read on us. Doing the same thing there. Again, off of the edge, you get them swiping and ripping, running down Michigan State's QB, forcing a fumble, right? So this is kind of what you get out. Yeah, this is what you get out of him. Again, dip and rip, beat you with speed, man. I'm doing this on purpose because I want you guys to see that there's not a lot going on in this pass rush game, but this is another one that's really interesting to me. Starting off down on that line of scrimmage and then dropping back into coverage, making a tackle in space. And this is just, again, running it back. You getting to see him in space, coming up, making a tackle, being able to close down his leverage on a running back or a receiver in screen plays is something that he does very, very well. Man, it makes me think this, Steve. And here's the question that I got for you. We got a guy, or a position, I should say, that we've been really, really, really trying to develop. This Sam linebacker position. And it's not just a normal Sam linebacker, strong linebacker position. This is a guy who plays at the line of scrimmage, who needs to be able to run with running backs, who needs to be able to drop down into coverage, who needs to be able to rush the passer in certain situations. It's kind of like a Swiss Army knife. It's like a hybrid of an edge rusher to an outside linebacker. Instead of just looking at Josiah Stewart as a defensive end or an edge, do you think that that's a position that Isaiah Stewart could play for the Detroit Lions?
Isaiah Stewart, former Detroit Piston, beef stew?
Or Josiah Stewart, I'm apologizing.
Beef stew, maybe. I don't know. He's a scrappy guy, likes to fight, went after LeBron James. I don't know, Will. Listen, just because he's a Michigan Wolverine doesn't mean that I love him. It doesn't mean, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm personally willing to take that kind of gamble with a second round pick, with a draft that's so loaded with second rounders, because you know who I like. I like JT Tuimoloau. I'll never say his name right. Once he's a Lion, I'll try to really work on that. But if I had to pick between the two in the second round, I'm going with JTT. But if we're sticking to just purely Josiah Stewart, I got some questions. I got some questions as to why he didn't participate in the NFL Combine or Michigan's Pro Day yesterday. Same thing with Will Johnson. Like, I'm not going to hammer it over and over again, but he didn't run anything. He didn't do anything really at his Pro Day or the NFL Combine. So what's going on there? And when I look at his measurables, a little small, Will. He's a little small. 6'1", 250, good weight, small arms. Question marks about his speed because I don't know exactly what it is because he hasn't ran the 40 or any drills or anything like that. So if I'm going purely off film and you're saying that he's a one-trick pony and maybe we have to convert him to a possible new position with all of the information I have at hand today, it's probably going to be a pass for me based on that.
Yeah, for me, it would be absolutely. It's a green light for me. But number one, when I look at these just prospects in general, a lot of the times, and I know that they can force the issue, but these decisions aren't in their hands. They got an agent that's saying, hey, look, listen, here's what you're doing in training. You're running a 4.6 in training, right? And although some teams are going to look at that and say, hey, his read and recognition or the way that he plays downhill, he doesn't play like a 4.6 guy, because a lot of people don't understand. You can have, I'll give a perfect example. Terry and Arnold. He ran a 4.5, I believe, right? Doesn't have that 4.4, 4.3 speed. A lot of people thought he would be too slow. I never see him out of position, right? Then there's a tremendous amount of corners that haven't had tremendous makeup speed, but if you don't put you in a position to where you need to make up speed, you're fine. True. So a lot of times these agents will say, hey man, you've been running a 4.6 in training. We got guys out here that's running 4.4s. It's really nothing you can gain from going to the combine and performing. Just let your film talk for you. A lot of times, it's not these guys' decision just saying, hey, I'm not going to train. I'm not going to do this. I'm not. I see nothing but relentlessness from him on the field. I see nothing but high effort. In every interview, this dude talks about how he loves football. I can't wait to be out there. All the teams that are contacting him are those teams that I tell you I rival all the time. They always get these guys that I love. When you talk about the Baltimore Ravens and the Philadelphia Eagles and the Pittsburgh Steelers, these are all teams that are heavily invested and also interviewing him and having him on visit. So that's another one that's like, man, I don't want to let him go to a team like that. So I got to watch him go do all of this freaky cool stuff. And then when I talk about the questions of him from a position standpoint, I pose the question because I wonder, could he be an upgrade to Derek Barnes? I'm not saying that he would be, but I think that he rushes the edge a little bit better than Derek Barnes. I think that he looks explosive and like he can run, and he looks kind of more natural in space than Derek Barnes. So I wonder, could he be a guy who comes in and competes, or could he be a situation where we get both of those guys on the field at the same time and make this defense a little bit faster and a little bit more explosive? Because people don't know Derek Barnes was a 4.5 guy. He's not a slow dude either. So if you get yourself in a situation where it's a pass down and you got Jaden Daniels out there, Jalen Hurts, any of these guys that are mobile out there at that quarterback position, and now instead of looking at a Marcus Davenport or a Levi Onwuzurike or a Alquin Muhammad, you got Josiah Stewart out there on the end, and you got Barnes out there at Sam linebacker. Hey, that thing is your defense has gotten way faster. It's going to become way easier to keep these quarterbacks boxed in rather than not having those same options. So when I think about JT, man, I think he's more of the same thing that we have in Detroit already. When I think about the Marcus Davenports and Josh Pascals and Alquin Muhammad's, and he's not a guy that's going to push that athletic freak needle, right? And you're not going to bully guys in the NFL unless you're first round special. If you're first round special, then you'll bully guys on the edge. Maybe you're that freaky athletic, but I don't think that these tackles are going to be out physical by most rookies that are coming in, especially if you're getting selected in the second round. So Josiah Stewart is a guy that I would be willing to take a chance on for those reasons. I'm not going to say that he's my number one guy in the second round. There's some other guys that I'm also interested in. But when I look at how this board should fall in my mind from between the mock drafts and then looking at what teams need and just the abundance of players at certain positions, there's a cluster of guys that I feel like should be there in the second round, whether you got to trade up 5 to 10 picks, or trade back even. There's some guys there. We've talked about the Landon Jacksons, who I love. And then at the top half of this thing, I talked about it yesterday, that cluster of dudes, man, that James Pierce, Nick Scott, and Mike Green, those guys, man, there's a potential that teams could see, hey, Michael Williams is gone. You know what I mean? Like Jalen Walker is gone. They start losing their guys, and these guys start coming off the board, and we don't have the same caliber of guy. Now you only got Mike Green, and you're saying that he has character issues. Hey, maybe what if it's down to him and James Pierce? James Pierce is a guy who's documented that doesn't really love football. I watched that interview of him. They were trying to talk to him about just football players and creating the best edge, and he was having a hard time. So you could tell that he's not a truly deep lover of football, and maybe he has some character concerns either. Do you draft one of those guys? Like it's going to be some tough decisions for Brad Holmes, is what I'm saying, Steve.
My knock on Mike Green is I only took him off my board. It has nothing to do with his gameplay. Nothing. It's that I don't think Brad Holmes is going to take a risk with any player out there that has any type of allegations against him, because he's not going to risk it, 2 years from now. Like, we're seeing some trends with the University of Georgia and why they're still letting their players buy cars, because they're getting in DUIs and in wrecks at 100 miles an hour every other week. So I don't think Brad Holmes is going to take a gamble on anything like that. He might clean it up for a year or two, but there's always that instance. Could he, is that old dog going to bite again? Is it worth the risk? But when I look at Mike Green, Will, he's tough to pass on in round one. He's tough. Like, if he's sitting there at pick 28, I'm going to be thinking, is this the type of guy that's a difference maker that gets us to a Super Bowl? Because we passed on Jalen Carter, and he's had no issues in the NFL since he got drafted. So I don't want that to bite us again. And I'm not saying that Jalen Carter was the reason we didn't win the Super Bowl this year, but he's a piece that would have been nice to have looking at it now. And I know that, it's a whole nother conversation. But when I look at Mike Green, if he's on the board at pick 28, would you be okay with it?
With Mike Green? Honestly, it would depend on who's on the board, man. I can't envision a situation where he would be the only guy that I would be okay with. Like everybody else.
Let me set the table. Mike Green's on the board. Tyler Booker's on the board. Landon Jackson's on the board. And take your pick of someone else. Who would your pick be out of those three?
Tyler Booker.
You think that's more of a position in need than D end?
I still can get DNs. I mean, there's just so many DNs. There's people that we haven't even named yet, like Donovan Izoroku. If we're talking second round, Kyle Kennard, and then you can still, I'm looking at too. We got to also understand if Brad wants somebody, he'll go get him. No different than Brian Branch. So if there's still guys, and there will still be guys there at the top of the second round, he'll be making those phone calls all night, figuring whatever he's got to do to trade up to the first pick and select Landon Jackson or Kyle Kennard or Jordan Birch there's just an abundance of guys that'll be there at the top half of the second round as well. So you're telling me, basically, when I look at it, I'm thinking about it like this. I'm thinking, man, is Mike Green so much better than Landon Jackson that I got to take him and not get the guard that I could get to? Is he that good? And then with his concerns off of the field, does that offset me going to get him too? Or would I feel better about going to get Landon Jackson and then also having Tyler Booker? You know what I'm saying? Does Mike Green outweigh the two of them? For me, it wouldn't even be a tough decision if the board's falling. So if you're looking at a board, and I think we will be, where you potentially have Kyle Kennard, Landon Jackson, Jordan Birch, Josiah Stewart, all these guys are still on the board. Yeah, I'm gonna take my guard, and I'm gonna make some phone calls about tomorrow, and I'm gonna trade up and go get one of those guys to offset having my guard. So for me, it would be a no-brainer. If Zabel or Booker's there, I have no problem taking them. If I don't take them, it's because the edge was so good that I had to take that edge. And for me, those are guys that I would really be interested at pick 28 would be. I know that I've given James Pierce a hard time. I was kind of going to save this and keep it close to the vest. If they look at James Pierce, and he's another one, and they said he doesn't have to be a D end all the time, he could play that same linebacker position too. That would be something I would be interested in. When you're looking at guys like Nick Scorton, those are guys that I would be interested in. Shamar Stewart, I know it's controversial, but his athleticism and setting an edge. And I know he didn't have a lot of production, but if you ask Casey Rogers and you say, hey, listen, this guy didn't have a lot of production, but he's a freak athlete, can he be a guy that's similar to Danielle Hunter? Danielle Hunter didn't have production in college. He's had hella production in the NFL. Another one is Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary came to University of Michigan. If you're a Michigan fan, you know we got Rashawn Gary, and he was supposed to be the best thing since sliced bread. He was supposed to take over U of M. He was supposed to be having statues of him and all of this stuff. He's a heck of a football player out there in Green Bay. So when I think about those are guys that I would be really interested, but you got to be special for me not to take my guard and then just go get another guy in the second round.
Well, you said yesterday we had 1.5 DNs, and you're going to pass on the best defensive end, arguably, in this draft for a guard that might start, but might not. I don't know.
I think Mike Green is the best DN in this draft.
That will be available at pick 28, most likely.
I
yes.
was about to lose my
that could be available. No, I think Abdul Carter is the best.
Okay,
I thought I said that, but maybe I didn't. Best possible available defensive end. And I have Davenport, who I'm only going to get 6 games out of. So I think Mike Green's your day one starter. Where if I draft Booker, and I love Booker, I think he's a phenomenal athlete. I think he could be a solid pro for a long, long time. Is he starting for the Detroit Lions day one? I think that's a coin flip. I don't know if I have a for sure answer to that. Would I bet on him over Graham Glasgow? I'd probably take Booker in that scenario, but Graham Glasgow's got 10 years or plus of experience. Graham Glasgow can play a little center as well. So I think his versatility really gives him the edge in Booker being a rookie. But, well, I can't leave this first round without an edge. Like, that's just my number one rule. I said that the day we lost to Washington, Edge. Like I did what Sonny Gray or whatever the guy's name is in draft day. I put a Post-it note in my pocket and it says Edge no matter what on draft day. I don't care who it is. Get me someone who can rush the quarterback. Booker, nice piece. Not 100% chance he gets on the field. Year 2, he probably definitely would. I think he'd either be playing, guard, or maybe we can teach him to play a little center. I don't know. But I think if I draft a defensive end, regardless of who it is, they're probably starting day 1.
Yeah, I don't think they're starting day 1. Marcus Davenport will probably be our day 1 starter. But
there's a chance Marcus Davenport breaks his pinky toe in training camp and he's out for the next 18 weeks.
I mean, there is, but I just feel like when I watched Marcus Davenport, man, he was a man out there when he was on the field. The way that he was just bull rushing guys, and they know that he's bull rushing, and he's just still having his way anyways. And I just like his attitude, man. He said, listen, I wanted to come back to the Detroit Lions. I want to prove to them and myself that I can get through a season and be a guy that's depended on. So I don't know. The Lions took a chance on him. I trust Brad. He gave him a 1-year deal. So let's see what you can do, man. I'm cheering for him. But for those reasons, I think that day 1, man, he'll be the guy out there on the edge, most likely, man. I would imagine we're probably going to be looking at DJ Reader, Levon Enrique, and then Marcus Davenport the first snap of the next season. So, but whatever edge we get is going to be out there in the rotation, and who knows, by the end of the season they could take it over, even if Marcus Davenport stays healthy. Who knows, man? Depending on who we draft. But I just feel like the difference between the edge we draft at pick 28 and the difference between the edge that we trade up in the second round to go get, well, how far is that gap going to be? And that's what it really boils down to. Even if you draft Mike Green, if you draft Landon Jackson in the second round, is there a crazy gap there, or is there some things that Landon Jackson can do better than Mike Green, but Mike Green can do better than Landon Jackson? Like, what's the offset? But now I still got a guard. Like, if you're telling me that I'm going to get somebody like Jalen Walker or Mykel Williams, then okay, I'm gonna tell you there's a gap. There's going to be a gap that's huge enough for me to maybe not get my guard, but I just don't see the gap being huge enough at the back end of the first round with who's probably going to be on the board.
Just need it to be draft day already, Will. Just need it to be.
Can't wait.
Because they're still free agents. Like, we could go through the draft, do our whole draft. There could still be some free agents out there. We could still have Zadarius Smith as a free agent sometime in June or July, right before training camp. So just trying to paint a picture for some people. Yeah, there's plenty of people. Yeah, the teams could fill up their whole draft, do everything they need to do in late April, and then go sign a Zadarius Smith, a Von Miller, whoever else might be available off the top of my head, DeMarcus Lawrence. Like, there's still names that could potentially be out there after the draft, or even some guys in training camp that might be cap casualties. So there's still plenty of ways to add to this team before and after the draft. So we'll just have to wait and see how the cards fall. You got anything else tonight?
Yeah, man. I mean, I just feel like if we go get Zadarius, that just gives us room, to go grab Jalen Milroe. All right, that's all I wanted.
All right, hey, we're done. No more shows. This will be the final show of Detroit Den 313. Thanks for watching, folks. It's been a hell of a run.
I don't know why you hate him so much.
I hate him. End of the show. Sorry, guys. See you in another life.